we end up, we can move it a little bit closer. Is that close enough?
So when I say it's really easy to download it easily.
I'm not sure which screen plays.
After I install it.
Okay.
Do it on my data packs again. Get out the start.
I don't, so somebody who is Mac plus projector competent,
What's wrong?
she's just trying to get what she's seeing up there.
Drag it to the.
Yeah, just drag it over and
That way?
space.
There we go. Yeah.
All right.
Oh, I see.
Hi everyone, welcome to TAG. So I'm going to talk about my experience of applying semantic web technology to solve the data challenges in financial and economic domain. So first, the problem space in, as an example, empirical economics is interested in studying a lot of different variables such as unemployment rate, revenue, cash flow of the whole economy, and not only the variables economy, but also the relationship between them. And the goal is trying to identify some dependence models between different variables. And another example for the financial analysis in finance domain, it definitely needs a lot of data to do the analysis. And more importantly, data not from single source, they need to integrate from heterogeneous sources. And current days, the open data and the big data have brought a lot of opportunities for people working in finance economics to leverage the large amounts of data for their research, trying to identify new models or new prediction models. And so the good thing is they have a larger sample size, so they can enlarge their sample space and identify some dependence relationships which couldn't be seen by a small sample size. But of course, the difficulty is how with so many data, how fast you can integrate them and how fast you can gain insights by analyzing them. And also because they are from different sources, often they have been assigned different identifiers. So how can you integrate them is another challenge. And the first of weird thing is that this data from different silos, and they have their own standards and different APIs. And so there is a large learning cost in when integrating data from different sources. And the current commercial products online, such as Yahoo Finance, Google Finance, they are not easy for data consumers to reuse the data and or improve their data model. So under such situation, how can we efficiently use data for the analytical purpose? So the idea proposed here is whether we can borrow the idea from the semantic web. So first, whether it is possible to build a common data representation across data sources, and so that you can establish a link among different data sets. And so as a result, the benefit is the data you've integrated is machine readable, and so that you can automatically identify more relevant data from the open data space. So the basic thing is transform the data representation from a document to the basic representation of the data, so that machines can understand the data as humans do. So by doing this, we can add more structures and meanings to the data being integrated. So as an example, in the financial analysis domain, and the analyst or investor, they have different sets of data which is currently organized in documents, but what they're interested in and what they have been doing is extracting the entities, the things, the valuable things that are valuable to their analysis. So that is on the right side, the orange boxes. Here is an example of data from one source about the stock, about the financial performance of Apple. So here you see the stock is represented or identified by its ticker symbol, and it's associated with several columns, and that's data people are interested in. And so transforming from this document representation to a graph representation, we can identify to the semantic representation, we can actually identify the different things, the entities, and also the relationship among them, such as the stock and the industries the stock is belong to, and this relationships between the industry and the sector, as well as a lot of quantitative values. And this is an example of data from another source. So this is the SEC filings, and here the CIK is the identifiers assigned by SEC used to identify a company. So from this identifier, we can go through the same steps and get the graph representations of this company. We can see that this company, during a certain filing period, it reported a certain amount of assets and how much is cash, the equity. And but actually, we know that both the market data about the stock and the SEC financial filings about the company, they are the same thing, and they are closely related to each other in analysis. So the purpose is to integrate these two data sets to establish the relationship between the stock and the firm. So now I'm going to show how to do it in a semantic web way. Well, the big thing is represented as the RDF manner, where you identify your subject, object, and use a predicate to establish the relations between these different entities. In order to be identifiable from the lots of other data on the network, we use UI to both to identify the subject, object, that is the things, as well as the relations. And the same as is an example of this predicates that is used to assert the same thing from different data representation graphs. So as a result, you get a graph model which is directed as denoted by the predicates, and also is labeled by the subjects. And one example is the data from DBpedia, which shows the RDF triples about the Wikipedia information. And here we could see that when we talk about the subject Apple company, we have triples saying that it is the company and when it is funded and who are the key persons. So both the persons and the company are represented as the entities. And another example is for firms' quarterly or yearly filings. Now they're in the SEC database in the XBRL format, and it is in XML tree model. But actually, we can extract the relations and transform a tree to a graph. So here we represented this one filing about to the RDF model. We're saying that this reporting record is about the asset and how much, what is the quantitative value about the asset, and when this reporting record is about. And in this context, we can see that it's about a certain company which is identified by UI of a company, and also it is about a certain timestamp. So just now we show two examples. One is DBpedia data, which is in the blue box, and one is the ICC data. So both data sources, they can be represented as a graph. They are expanding, but when you are trying to integrate these two data sets, and you need to find some relationships between these two data sources. And here, what we can say is that the companies and in the SEC filings indexed by the CIK and in the Wikipedia cloud, they are the same company. So we use the same as the predicate to link these two data sources. So now I'm going to briefly introduce the prototype we'll be building in the finance and economic domain. So in our project Wikipedia, we have collected data about companies and structured them and represent the data about the companies and their related things. And the things being represented here is which sector the companies belong to, and their financial statements, as we just went through from the SEC filings, and also its management, its people, its managers, its board member, and as well as this lobbying activity, and also the basic information about the geolocations, including its EPA facilities. And we also represented different people entities. So when the company management in the file to SEC about their transactions of the stock or derivative products, we can extract those people that relate to this company, and also the related board members and the lobbyists this company had employed to do the lobbying, and who and the person that received the money of the lobbying. And on the right, this is just one example showing the lobbying, the people of the type of lobbying recipient. We could see that this person is mapped to other data sources such as the New York Times page and the Wikipedia and the Freebase. And below is a sum of data we've extracted from the lobbying data, which companies have spent how much money for this lobbying recipient. So as a summary, the Wikipedia project we have integrated different data sources, both from the government data source, such as the SEC, EPA, and lobbying filings, and as well as a lot of open data on the web. And so the key contribution is to use the data from different sources, we need to understand the different identifiers that point to the same company. So here is an example of the mapped identifiers we have generated, and for the legal identifiers such as the SEC, CIK, the lobbying registrant ID, and also the which exchange this company is traded and under what ticker symbol this company is traded, as well as a lot of informal identifiers from the web. And here in this example is the Freebase UI and the UI from the New York Times. So as a result, using the UI, understanding the identifiers using by different data sources, we can easily query the data source. And here is the example where we query the lithosis, which have a lot of data about the company's management. And on the top, we could see this is the identifiers used by lithosis, and this is from these identifiers we query the management people and some basic data about them. And this is how we retrieve the different ETF facilities of these companies and where these facilities are located. And this date has been mapped to the instance hub of the login project. And in this example is the data from Department of Labor about the companies regarding their their enforcement. And here I'm going to show
So
how.
could you actually go back to that? So in this case, it's you're actually looking up. You're not using an identifier to look up this, are you? Or are you? Or are you looking up based on the address?
Oh no, here is actually using the identifying the company, but in the Department of Labor, they don't assign specific identifiers, and here we are mapping the company by the company name they're using.
What is DOL?
Department of Labor.
Thanks.
And here I'm going to show some quick examples on how the after getting some data, how it can be used. And this is a very great demo built by the undergrads working on Wikipedia project at LSE, and who is here today. So it visualizes the networks among the board members. Here we could see that each node is each person, and how it's divided is related to how different board members how different boards it attends for different companies. So in this way, we can gain some quick insights about who is the important person here, and we can easily see, a person is associated with the money board. We assume that this would be the person of interest or something of importance. And this is another example built by undergrads, Yang, who match up with data we collected with the stock price data and show it in the mobile application. And here, when the investors visualize the stock market performance of company, he can get the related information that we collected over Wikipedia to gain some to add to his explanation about the market behavior. So in using data, we need to know how to query the data. And this is in semantic web. This is done by the Sparkle query, which is you specify the graph patterns and matching the patterns in the data graph. And you can query the subject, predicate, or object. So by specifying the graph patterns. And to give an example, we see on the top right, we have data about the company, and we see in the red box it's a New York Times identifier, and in the New York Times they have a lot of other attributes such as the search API for the company, where you submit the query and you get a list of news about this company. So in getting the news, we need to know this API and how to query for this API. And this is an example. So the basic components of Sparkle query is highlighted here. And here you query the topic page and API given an identifier of the company in the New York Times and specify the graph patterns in the data. And here is the sample code of how you submit the Sparkle, how the Sparkle query can interact with the web programming languages. Here is an example of Python. And you submit the query and you receive the Sparkle query results, and you get the API, and then you combine it with your API developer key and from what time span you want to retrieve the news. And then you will get a list of news from the API. They have different attributes about the topics of the news and when the news about, and such data could be further analyzed according to different requirements. And next, I'm going to give example of how to use the data we collected to study some certain economic or financial behaviors. And the domain, the problem we're looking at is the company's lobbying behaviors. And here just simply list 3 questions that could be interesting. First is what is the factors that affect companies' decision engaging in lobbying, and how the lobbying activities varies over time, and finally, what is the effects of companies' lobbying behaviors. So first, in identifying the determinants, here I give example of hypothesis whether the activity in going to lobby is related to firm's total asset value. And in trying to test this hypothesis, I'm using a t-test where I get 2 samples. One is a sample about the firms who went to lobbying, and one sample is about the firms who didn't engage in lobbying. And then try to compare the mean of their assets. And so first, how to get the sample of firms who engage in lobbying, and this shows how to do it in R. So here you query for the companies, and because you want the companies that you want lobbying samples. So here in the red part, you specify the firms who appears in the lobbying data. Here the lobbying ID is the lobbying registrant identifier we have identified. And then you also query for which sector this company from, where the company is located. And then later you, by the way, you need to use the Sparkle package in R, and later you can submit the query in R. And because we also need to compare the assets, so we go to another data source to query the assets and cash value of the company. And here what we use is the CRP value, which is identify the sample companies we have received from both samples. And after getting the cash and total assets, here we did a very fast plots of the data after they have been merged. So on the so the first plot shows the distribution of assets among 2 samples. The first is the companies who engage in lobbying, and the second is the companies who didn't lobby. So intuitively, we can see that both the cash asset and the cash of the lobbying firm is greater than the firms who did not lobby. So here is very intuitive results. And to do some formal rigorous test, we compare the means through a t-test. And so first we verify whether the 2 samples same variance, and we found they are actually independent samples. And then by the t-values and p-values returned, we can see that the means of the assets is actually different for the 2 group of firms. And then we are interested in what kind of issue the firm is lobbying about. And here is we query the firms and the issues, and how many lobbying filings this firm has been lobbying on this issue. This is a Spark query. And after receiving the results from Sparkle query, we do a quick visualization in R. Here we use the Google Viz package, and just several lines of code. We build 2 bar charts about the firms lobbying on different issues. The first, the top one is the total amount of filings of each lobbying issue. So you can. I think actually I can show you the live example.
Yeah.
I want to get my browser to this screen, but actually. I'm not sure which screen this one is showing now. Does anyone know about the presentation?
We need an act on it.
So I'm not sure how to show this.
So it's on your screen, but it's not displaying it there.
Yeah.
So it's not in mirror view then, which means it's in the wrong space.
Yeah.
So it's over here.
Is it here?
He was actually displaying on the TV upstairs for a while. So budget appropriations is the one way on the left.
Yeah, but this is so different from on my computer. On my computer, when I click on it, I can, yeah, it's just a little bit slower. So we see from the different lobbying issues, the total amount of filings received is distributed quite unevenly. And you see there are some of the budget lobbying receive a lot of filings from firms, and it goes down to some issue that is very occasional lobbying. So this is the accompanying.
Are these in contribution filings? That's what these are, is
The lobbying filings.
right, but it's, okay, the lobby. Right, but under LDA, isn't it, don't you register, you register as a lobbyist, but you also register, which is all lawyers, but you register contributions?
Here, I'm not looking at the lobbyists, but the firms. Which
Yeah,
firm?
right, but if you're 3M,
Mhm.
okay, you register each incident of each payment, is that how it is?
Yeah, each
That's what
payment.
it says.
And on the bottom, it shows the number for different lobby issues. The number shown is the number of industries. So, for example, if for a certain lobby issue, there are 5 firms lobbying on it, but actually they may be from the same sector, same industry, and so the number of industries is 1. And here on the total amount is showing the showing the number of industries that is lobbying on this issue. By doing this, the purpose is to gain some quick insight on whether some lobby issue is just lobbied by a small set of firms which belong to the same industry, and in this case, we would say that this lobby issue will be the industry-specific lobby issues and not of common interest to general companies. Going back to presentation. So here, by using the visualization, we can fast obtain some quick results, such as the distribution among lobby issues and the different kinds of lobby issues. And the second question that I'm trying to give a brief answer is the lobbying dynamics. And the sample firms I got is around 300 firms which engage in lobbying from the time 1999 to 2010. And for the firms, for some of these firms, there are 301 firms who have filed lobbying more than 5 times. So the hypothesis is going to be tested on these sample firms. First, whether the firms' lobbying activity happens randomly, which is under the assumption that the cost of the engaging in lobbying is how big is the cost of the lobbying. So if there's very little cost, then firm would just do lobbying whatever they want at their wish. But if there's a substantial cost associated with lobbying, then the firm's activity may not happen so randomly. And the second is whether there's any relations between the actual amount of dollars that the firm spending in lobbying over time. And in test, the first question of the lobbying dynamics, whether firms' lobbying activity happen randomly, independently. So I get a list of the timestamps that the firm filed their lobbying, which is shown here, and actually retrieved from the SPECL query results, and I feed them into the sum process by trying to identify whether the inter-lobbying time is normally distributed or not. And so this is done by the normality test in R. And as a result, only 42 firms, they have showed the positive to be where their lobbying activities follow up some process. And what is plot here is example. And here what it can be seen here is the inter-lobbying time. Course time is generally normal distributed, which means that the lobbying activities happens independently. That doesn't depend whether the firm's lobbying in a certain time doesn't have any dependence on some previous lobbying activities. And second test is to see the amount of dollars that firms spending on lobbying. And to doing this, I aggregate the firm's lobbying spending to a time series to the yearly total lobbying spending, and then trying to fit them into autoregressive or moving average models. And so in these examples, we see that the lobbying amount, lobbying activities didn't happen independently. So we further try to identify some moving average term by plotting its autocorrelation and also the partial autocorrelation. And we see that their moving average terms at 2 lags. That means the randoms from previous 2 periods has the impact on the future lobbying spending. And also there's one term of autoregressive, which means that its previous times lobbying spending has some positive, here is positive, has some positive effect on its next year's lobbying spending. But what's interesting here is we want to identify whether there's the interesting phenomenon we're interested in, whether the lobbying activity happens a lot in a very short time. This we call a burst of lobbying. That is, the firms didn't do lobbying for a long time, but suddenly it began to lobby very actively, which is shown in the right. Here we see this firm began to increase its lobbying spending after 2008. And how this burst is identified is by plotting its distribution of the inter-lobbying time, which is called a waiting time. And when the waiting time is, it could be kind of fitted by a straight line in the log-log plot. It suggests there's a bursty behaviors. And so this is how this data can be generate some interesting observations. And finally, we show that the interesting phenomena of lobbying could be observed, but what does it mean? Does it suggest the impact from lobbying, or that it actually bring the values to the firm? The lobbying activities could be associated with the firm's risk, because the firms is actively engaging in lobbying means increased spending, and by increasing the lobbying spending, targeting at certain returns, but this is a return from lobbying is quite uncertain. So this could be connected to the firm's risk-taking behavior. And second, by looking at which issues the firm is lobbying at, such as whether the firm is lobbying about the issues that it's doing the good to society or it's against the general value of society. And finally, by these different phenomena, so whether these explanations of firm's behavior can be coincide with the firm's behaviors in the stock market, whether investors have the same perceptions of firm's lobbying behavior. And as an example,
social responsibility.
And as an example, I queried the firms which lobby in the tobacco issue, and here is a query for the also, so first I get the firm, a list of firms who engage in tobacco lobbying, and then if the firm have constantly engaged in lobbying tobacco, I've tried to analyze this firm, and to get this query is the lobbying identifier, get the stock ticker symbol from our linked data source. And after getting this stock ticker symbol, which here, we can use this stock identifier to query Yahoo to get the stock price. And this is how the mashup is done in R and using Sparkle Query. And as a result, we identified this is an example of one firm who constantly engage in tobacco lobbying, and its spending on tobacco lobbying is increasing over year. And in the bottom, this shows the stock price of these firms. And so generally, we can see the general trend of after 2003, the firm's lobbying spending on tobacco is increasing, and the firm's stock price is also increasing. So this is doesn't confirm our hypothesis that the investor wouldn't invest more in the firms who engage in lobbying issues, which is against normal social values. So these are the examples I've briefly shown with the data we have collected, and there is a lot more could be done by matching up the more data sources, such as the data from Wikipedia and news.
Go back to slide 59. So that stock price crash was when the settlement happened, the tobacco settlement in a lot of the states.
And the lobbying that went along with that had to do with the attempt to kind of mitigate that. And actually, what this shows is that how drastically ineffective the lobbying was for tobacco companies. Because you'll note that during the period that the lobbying spending increases after that, the stock price is flat, and then when they actually it drops off, nothing happens. They spike it back up. Things continue to fall off, and then at the end there, it's creeping back up because it's undervalued. But they've basically given up on lobbying against the regulations that are in place.
So there could be more than one explanation depending on the time period. So if you look at the left card, you see as the firms increases lobby, but the price is also increasing.
Yeah, but those might have separate variables, and so
Yeah.
they might. What that could very easily mean is that because the investors were seeing that there was a chance that the tobacco companies might win the settlement, and also from up until basically. I'm not sure. So basically, in 2008 was the presidential election. That's about the time they probably gave up on the current presidency.
Oh, and then they picked back up
They
again.
picked right back up after the election.
Because I was wondering whether there was an appeal.
So
Because those are significant.
Yeah. So the interesting thing here is, so these are all hypotheses, okay? And there's several that you haven't mentioned, that could have happened. We don't know what the market was doing. This could be happening in the context of a massive fall of the market. And so the point of the next slide is actually the potential of, well, why don't we just click on, that time spot and get the New York Times context, the Wall Street Journal context, the Wikipedia context.
And we can click on other things. So we could click on the Topside Grid
Right.
thing and look at, because we've got tax per pack and price per pack, and we also have when bans went into effect.
Yep.
So we could actually connect this into our other demos, and I think that July 2006 drop, I think exactly correlates with a significant increase in price per pack.
Oh.
And actually, when I showed it to my tobacco experts, they said, they brought up the same thing. It's when this court case got settled.
Yeah, so now they have to start paying down that award.
Right.
Yeah. That basically happened overnight. That's why there's that huge drop.
Right. So it's interesting that there's this huge drop here. There's a huge spike in these other demos. And then connecting it into the New York Times, this would be a nice, we should write a paper on this. Because it would be a
I
nice.
think she already has.
Well, kind of. I mean,
Yeah.
I think she's written a few papers, but I don't think you've written the papers that tie together multiple of our demos, showing these significant swings in one of the graphs.
Yeah, it's this following the hypotheses thing. It's really, and while it's kind of enabling the testing of the hypotheses. So you have, you have this information, but this information is obviously
Yeah, it's like a
you
linked
can't
data
you
methodology.
can't conclude anything from it.
Yeah.
Right.
No, but you can find co-occurring interesting things.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
then you bring it to somebody, like my tobacco experts at the National Cancer Institute, you bring it to them and they say, oh, well, we know this other background information.
Right, and so the point is connecting, because they are NCI tobacco experts. They've got this enormous context, what you want to be able to do is to use, our technology to create that virtual tobacco or that virtual expert, that contextual expert.
Well, so there's a contextual expert, but there's also just a pinpointing of interesting events. So you've got a couple of really big swings here. And then you look at this time period and see whether there's any other interesting big swings in other related sources.
So there's a question. There's a couple other things that I was actually going to ask about on this. One is, so we don't know. Well, first I'll scroll back a little bit. When you were showing that query about the querying, essentially looking up what issue, what the lobbying issue was. How? So I've actually looked at that data, and I don't remember the answer to this question of how they're specifying a particular issue. Because you have to declare the issue, on both sides of it. If you work for a lobbyist firm, if you're a registered lobbyist, you have to specify essentially the issue, like international trade, or, that sort of thing. But is that self-declared? Is that from a list? You have
It's
to.
self-declared in the login filing reports.
But so the question is, if I could be a healthcare enterprise lobbying tobacco, I could be a tobacco company lobbying tobacco.
Right.
Does it get reported in the same way? I'm lobbying both of these guys. They can be on opposite sides of the issue, lobbying tobacco.
Oh, you mean the different side, which side they take in the lobby?
Yeah. I mean, is that distinguished at all?
Actually, I didn't find there such data fields in each side.
Right. So going back to your graph, we don't know whether we're looking at the lobbying expenditures. So go forward to the So we don't know whether that company up above there.
Yeah, that is actually we can see this from Wikipedia. If you bring up the company page of Wikipedia, you can see which industry this company is in.
Right.
And it's easy to find a company in the tobacco industry or
Yeah.
what business company.
Do you have that actually displayed? Because that's very interesting.
We have the required data of what industry this firm is belong to, or currently it's a lobbying ID.
I mean, did you put it into slides or? Because this is the kind of thing which is very interesting. You know, these interrelationships.
Which industry this firm is.
Yeah, a company like 3M, which is sort of one of these great use cases, they lobby on all sorts of different things, anything from healthcare to probably not tobacco. But they're in everything because they're a ginormous company with lots of many locations around the United States, so they have environmental issues, they have various legal issues.
Yeah, but using the infrastructures that such as these sample codes, we can easily get the firm's behavior on a certain lobbying issue, given the firm.
By the way, it's tobacco lobby.
Yeah, that's me too.
Yeah. This is the second time today you've gotten busted on the spelling.
Oh, second time, right?
Yeah, Jim brought it up in the Wikipedia.
Yeah, we always rely on the
Yeah,
author
it's inconsistent,
correction.
so there's the
Well,
tobacco.
yeah, this is just a title.
Right, but it's reflected on that.
Right, yeah. Right.
Yeah, so
So you should really take heart about how this fairly simple thing can be interactive in a very powerful way. It's really
the interaction.
right, to be able to explore hypotheses based on stuff that somebody could have gotten fired in there too. There could be a CEO that got fired.
Yeah, so
Right after that last spike. I told you, no more.
right. So that is the idea is that we seek here is doing more background information, such as the news or more basic information about the company. So this can help to explore the hypothesis base after you just visualize the patterns of data. And what I did here is just very simple, quick examples. I didn't do the very rigorously.
So just one more thing, and this is along the same. So something like so just extending Jim's point. There's sort of a timeline to what you're talking about. It wasn't just one event,
Right.
but there were several related events over a period of time, and being able to sort of plot this how you could define that related sequence of events, which are several different points in time, and overlaying and being able to apply it to here is an interesting question.
Yeah.
And I have no
You mean
idea.
the events that is interrelated in time or interrelated in nature? So, for example, is it events about the firm's lobbying or is it events about the firm's sales revenue?
Well, here this is a case of this legal
It's a different topic, so you write for articles about tobacco issues at that time point. And, you would see, if you graphed the number of articles about tobacco and related issues, kind of as a subplot on that, you probably see a spike right where that stock price dropped, where basically they announced that there was a settlement, and so that got major press everywhere. And then as a result of that, people sold off their shares of Philip Morris and Nabisco and all those other ones.
It's sort of like plotting, the sentiment analysis as defined by the New York Times. This is activity on this particular issue, number of articles, this article activity, and looking at that, which is an indicator of the current trend, what's currently happening.
So I think this is going to be fairly clean around the tobacco stock price. It's not clear to me that it's going to be clean around these spikes in the lobbying, though.
Is this one company's?
Yeah, this is one company.
Oh, so actually, if we aggregated for multiple big companies.
Yeah, that would be the other thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. On the other hand, what you could do is do you can do a cluster analysis of articles by topic. Find out what is this trend matching in the news? Because obviously they're reacting to something. So you could do like a Pearson correlation on basically just the counts of use the time frame as the dimension for that cluster, and what you're doing is you're clustering by topic over time to see when.
Do you mean one specific topic or the number of news about this topic?
So the news coverage of a topic.
Right. In this way, you can see the correlation of this effect from this news about this topic.
Exactly.
And here, if we do the same thing, you can see whenever there's a spike in tobacco lobbying, and when there's a response from the stock market, and we can collect a sample of the spikes in tobacco lobbying, and then we statistically we identify after this tobacco lobbying spike, there's significant stock price return increase. So this is they need a larger sample of these spikes. I think this is the same thing as what you suggested is also another factor of the news coverage. Which I think it depends on what you want to be explained and what is the independent variables.
Right. Yeah. And so an independent variable in this case would be, it also.
The news
If the news coverage of a particular issue, so if there's, so for instance, one dependent variable that we mentioned in here is, or one independent variable that tobacco lobby might be dependent on is the political cycle, campaigns and so forth. If this followed campaigns, which actually, if you look, there's August 2004, that's another drop in lobbying efforts. That's a presidential election. There's another one in August 2006. That's a congressional election. There's another one in 2000 and in 2002.
How to explain that when there's an election, the lobbying drops?
Because it's up in the air as to who's going to be in office in the fall.
Oh, so people are not sure, so they rather not spend money. Okay, I see. Thanks.
And so the local minima in this graph are all election cycles.
And that actually should be on it should be on a 2-year. Well, so there's a
There's
couple.
a major, minor cycle to it.
Exactly.
Yeah, the majors are under presidentials.
Yeah.
You can see the 2000, 2004, 2008 are the lowest.
Right, because there's oftentimes there's a wave.
Right. So a cleaner analysis is first remove the election cycle, the seasonalities, and then you see if it is not condition. So conditioning on the election cycles, whether they are, how is the lobbying spending increase?
Right, well, it depends on what you're trying to get at.
Yeah, and I imagine it'd be changed as well.
If you're trying to understand why they're spending what they're spending, and then, so if the question is, does more lobbying result in better stock prices?
Right, right.
You'd need to filter that out, but if what you're trying to figure out
But you
is...
can match that with campaign funds, which would be the other thing. So also, this is only looked at lobbying, which is completely different from campaign financing and funding. And so that money that would be going to the lobbying is now going into campaign finances of over all the different candidates, the ones which the company think have the best chance to win. So if you were to add that information in there as well, along with lobbying, to get a full picture of what companies are actually spending in the political process, and now you can go through your analysis and see how does that affect the market price.
What you need to, I mean, if you really want it sort of a more subtle consideration, you've got the money that's going into the lobbying, issue lobbying, and then you've got to get into like congressional record type thing, or try to draw it out of times of what is the actual legislation that's being.
Well, that's why I was thinking
what's that activity? Because the lobbying, the whole theory, right? The lobbying is essentially trying to put. Lobbying is translating to time that a lobbyist is spending with legislators, which is supposedly, in theory, leading to legislation being introduced.
Yeah.
Okay, and so what is the and time spent on that legislation? So the question is, what's going on in terms of bills being introduced and so one of the logical questions would be all this money being spent there. What was going on there? Was there after this burst of this? Was there a lot of bills being introduced?
Right. I think that and that's why I suggested the idea of doing a cluster analysis versus newspaper coverage topics, because if something is being proposed in Congress, usually there's coverage about it. And usually the coverage about that topic goes up.
Right.
And so you would, in theory, see an increase in that. But if this could, so you could see potentially like
For the bigger things, but I mean a lot more esoteric things that are not going to get coverage for smaller bills, or for things that are being introduced into bills that have different purposes aren't being talked about. The very purpose of it is to hide that,
On the other hand, it's a lot easier to analyze.
Oh, absolutely. No, absolutely.
Newspaper coverage than it is to analyze congressional records.
Yeah, I would focus.
By cluster analysis, you mean cluster the news by topic?
Yeah.
Over time.
I think
Then you have the curves of each topic, right?
You have a centroid, the time-independent centroid of the news coverage. You want to figure out how closely, where, for instance, a given company's lobbying efforts end up going. So
you
what?
first cluster the news topic, then you only look at the topics related to lobbying, and you see how this.
No, not to lobbying, to the actual specific bill being
Right.
discussed.
But how do you
it's-
identify which
You
bills?
simply do a cluster analysis of the topics and these lobbying efforts. You find and you cluster them all together. So where there's a correlation between the efforts in lobbying and news coverage, it means that they've basically been lobbying and it's been effective in that area.
Go back to
being
the.
clustered is despite the lobbying, or
No, for the actual issue. So for SOPA, for example,
Go
there's a lot of
back,
lobbyists from the different
go back to
entertainment
the-
industry looking into that.
You had that sort of long tail chart of the different issues.
oh, I always think about we're talking about only a specific issue.
Yeah. So go back to that. So for every one of these, every one of these bars, there is. Yeah, there's one of these graphs. Okay, and what Jim is suggesting is that you correlate all these activities and these different issues with the activity
In the
in the news, and so you can see this activity in transportation correlates to all this press coverage that's happened about this transportation, probably legislation being introduced about transport.
Right.
The president has proposed a new transportation initiative, or
Yeah, and the reason why you do that instead of just say, oh, well, transportation maps to transportation lobbying maps to transportation issues, is that there are a lot of interdependent topics that are covered in the news that would impact that. So, for instance, transportation, there's a lot of manufacturing that goes along with it, and so it may actually be that manufacturers are trying to drive transportation bills. So Caterpillar,
different unions
Exactly.
or other things going
Yeah.
through that.
yeah, Caterpillar is
This
in.
is the news is per firm level or per just general topic level? So you collect news about the given firm and then you cluster the
This is
firms
on
by the
just
topic?
all news about everybody.
According to a specific bill or something like that.
So in this way, the thing will identify whether the lobby actually take effect. have
Or
influence
what's
on
driving the
effect.
lobbying, potentially. I mean, it could be going either way.
So Jim brings up an interesting point. Do you have information showing who the any sort of buyers and sellers of supplies are, right? So they get if I build engines, maybe I want to introduce new legislation so that they'll buy more buses so that my engines get purchased from me and that raises my revenue or something like that. Do you have any sort of data structurally in RDF that says company X buys stuff from company Y, buys stuff from company Z?
No,
Like we know Apple
like-
buys from Foxconn, so can Foxconn try to
back in a year.
do stuff like that?
Yeah, that's the very, very valuable data set, but we don't have the merger or cohesion data sets. And actually, we haven't identified a very good open data source. They provide this information, except you can do some text analysis from the news and extract the M&A activities.
So on a similar theme, I think you and Payne were trying to do a connection between the Semantic Water Quality Portal and this data to identify which companies own the facilities that were in violation of a regulation. I don't know whether you intended to show any slides on that or how far you've gotten on that. Do you have enough data
That
to do
is
that?
shown in P's water quality demo. When you click on the city that has a pollution, it can go back to the company. You can see which company it is, and you go back to it can lead you to Wikipedia, and then you get some background information about what business the company is doing and further about the news.
But I think there were some challenges. Correct me if I'm wrong. But I think there were some challenges in that facility X, like one on this river, was in violation of some regulation. But the interesting thing is who actually owns that facility, which company owns it. Because one of the things that you would want to find out is if one company is in violation all over the place. And of course they want to hide that from you. And I think one of the things that we thought Orpedia was going to be able to help with was tying together who owned what facilities and what subsidiary, how the subsidiaries were all connected to each other.
Well, the
I-
will is the correct word to use. because this is in the very early stages. So one of the things we did do is, so yes, you've got the facilities information, and you have to correlate however they're representing the ownership of that facility.
Right,
with-
so I
because
noticed,
there's no such thing as a sort of a legal entity identifier that's linked into that facility.
right. So what Ping uses is some data from the EPA. I noticed that one of your feeders was the EPA when you had that circle of where you got your data. She takes data from the EPA about who had a permit, who was in violation of the permit. And what that identifier is related to what Jen's identifier is, or what Orpedia's identifier is. They probably don't match. And they probably are making it difficult.
Yeah, and that's, so we've done, a couple of months ago, we did a lot of, so we were trying to do a similar exercise with the site inspection data from Department of Labor. She mentioned Department of Labor on one of those slides. And then basically there's this WHD, and I can't remember which WHD.
It's wage, hour, and days.
Yeah, it's this data set that's kind of a catch-all of different kinds of potential violations that a company can make, and it includes things like the Family Leave Act violations and overtime violations, all these different kinds of violations. It's all in there, but it's very difficult to. It's not a straightforward thing to correlate that to say what their name is in the SEC. So we did a lot of Google Refine, playing around with Google Refine, trying to do a match. And we've got,
This is what we get for given company. We have a list of EP facilities, and each one of them is the facility identifiers used by EPA. And when you click, you actually go to the EPA website about this facility.
Oh, okay, so I think this matches what Ping's got.
Yeah, so if P is using these EPA identifiers, I think she did, and we did the map in her demo.
Now, did you go to? Do you also have the Department of Labor stuff up here, the WHD stuff linked in? Yeah.
Well, for this one, it's not WHD. Some company, for this company, doesn't have that data set, but it has data set from OSHA about the injury.
Have you been looking at any campaign finance data, like OpenSecrets.org and Transparent? I can't remember what the sister project is. Open Secrets is on the federal level. The Transparency, something I can't remember the sister project is on the state and local
Is it
level.
the basic unit is a company?
Yes, so companies and who they're lobbying for. The big interest at the moment, since 2009, is the effects of the Citizen United decision from the Supreme Court that made corporations of personhood and allowing unlimited funds inside of super PACs to be able to fund campaigns in the United States, both at the federal level. Huh?
Does that one play a role?
It's a huge effect in change. Yeah, only like the Republican resurgence of 2010. You had a lot to be thankful for that. But so there's a huge effect right now in terms of the effects that had in 2010 in terms of campaign decisions and results from the super PACs and from that decision. And right now is going to be the first presidential election with Citizens United on the books, allowing the same types of campaign financing. And so we're now coming up to a big data point in terms of reading. Already, there's a bunch of data recorded just in the current election cycle of what's already happened. But once the Democrat convention happens and the real finance swing starts happening over the summer, it's going to be very interesting to see the response from corporations and what they do and the effects it'll have.
That one has something like already an order of magnitude more money collected. It's just
the amount of money that's
I wanted to.
insane.
Yeah,
So-
I'm running out of power. I need to.
I wanted to ask you, do you have more? So it's already half an hour beyond what you expected to go. And I was wondering if you had more slides.
No, I don't have.
All right. Okay, so in that case, do we have more questions for Shen? Or suggestions?
Yeah, I receive a lot of good feedbacks from you guys, and that's very helpful to me.
So now, this was partly a practice talk, right, for an upcoming talk, is that correct?
Yeah, I'm going to talk to new people who is a researcher or people from industry in finance and economic domain, and they don't have experience or knowledge in data management, especially using semantic web, and they have been getting used to CSV and not even database. But now there's a lot of more data available for their research. So the purpose talk is to introduce this new technology, new data model to them, and show how they can use it.
So the reason I wanted to bring that up is I wanted just, given that piece of information, that was why Shen had some of that introductory RDF, but it blew by really quickly, and I'm wondering should she have more context?
Oh, absolutely. If the audience of who you're speaking to are stuck in the model of CSV and raw data and have never even gone to a database or even understanding linked data concepts, you would have to start from ground zero and build up to describe why any of this is worth anything and why they should give a damn about it. I mean, I think you do that from the results of what you're doing, but for them to understand exactly what it is that this means and what the potential of this is beyond what you've already done, I think that's absolutely necessary.
I think that she took an interesting approach where she kind of pulls you along, and at certain points she kind of dives down into, explaining RDF and then kind of going on. But and I didn't say anything.
Do you think that the introduction about the basic about RDS are not enough or not clear?
I think the consensus is
No, it was fine for us because we know that.
Yeah.
Hopefully, looking and giving some eyes around. Yeah. But yeah, it'd be more than that. I think a good starting place or a good way to approach that possibly is reading up on the grant doc for Orcpedia. Both Jim and Beth, thank you, I'm blanking on the name, wrote a really great document describing the overarching goals and ideas of why Orcpedia is necessary and what space that fulfills in the current world of finance data.
And we have that somewhere. I think it may be in our
Yeah, I think
Dropbox.
that will take away some of the technical challenge from Orcpedia, but the Orcpedia is more about, as we in the meeting in the afternoon said, the audience is more government user regulator.
No. Dominic's point is in that. I think she calls it the one pager.
Yeah.
Okay. There's a really nice kind of a description of the RDF model.